Hey, good morning. So thank you so much for getting up. How many of you guys are West Coasters? Wow, I'm very impressed, because I would only be here if I had to be right now. Sleeping in is a good thing, especially after a late night. I want to start off just by giving you a brief introduction. This session is a continuum of a yesterday panel with Chris Messina and Luke Roblowski, Kristen, myself, Liz Danzico. And we started a conversation actually back at South by Southwest, and then before that a couple conversations, and we realized that there was sort of this industry trend of being stuck in some ways and feeling like we needed to get unstuck. So yesterday's panel really went through some different scenarios from corporate to independent to small teams, and I think we started some discussion, and we'd really like to continue it, and that's why hopefully, at the end we're going to give you some ways that you can actually interject and comment and submit your own things about how you're feeling stuck or unstuck. And Kristen and I are going to just run you through 75 minutes. I don't know why they made it 75 minutes, but we're just going to go through and hopefully have time at the end to have a very candid, open discussion about how you guys are feeling. And I think that communication has just started. So, just to get started, we put together our thoughts on how we feel stuck at times and how we want to get unstuck. And we actually met, and we decided to meet in Barcelona because that was one of the most unstuck cities that we know. Kristen,
we kind of stumbled into each other in Stockholm and just started talking.
Yeah.
I think this is making some funny
loud
sound.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
And we just started chatting, and basically we were frustrated about not being able to kind of live out our dreams, our geeky digital dreams, together with our clients. And so we kind of started talking about how clients can be stuck and how we can help them, as well as ourselves, to get unstuck.
Right, and I realize that, Kristen, I deal with a lot of corporate environments. I have a small company in San Francisco, but formerly had a large agency and have just been dealing with large corporate entities for a long time and a lot of startups. And I met Kristen in Sweden and realized that he is one of the most unstuck people that I know. And I said, what is your magic? What's your secret? So he's going to let you know a little bit more about that later.
The secret.
The secret to being unstuck. So in my worldwide search for getting unstuck, we started collecting data from a lot of different people. And we made it into this short little snippet here. It seemed a common theme with people that were having fun. So that was a big piece of it. So we kind of came, we started brainstorming, and we started thinking about, why we might be stuck or why we aren't stuck. And I'm just going to take you through some scenarios of why you may or may not feel stuck. I kind of started thinking a little bit more broadly about why people feel stuck, and I have people fill out these cards and they say, here's how I'm feeling now. And this is in your personal life as well as your professional life as well as your organizational life. And a really common theme that came up was people that felt like they had no vision or purpose. So that was kind of interesting. They didn't quite know what the end goal was. And so this is one of the comments that someone filled out a card and actually sent up during one of our panel discussions at South by Southwest. He said, how do we transition to Web 2.0 when our administrators have a very specific idea of what they want, and it is not at all Web 2.0. So this big component of moving from Web 1.0 to 2.0 started to come up and fuel our thought. Another thing that came up a lot was that you didn't really have support or buy-in. And so you didn't feel like you had administrators or staff or top-down management that understood what you were going through and why. And so how do we convince the old guard to allow the new school to take our Web 2.0 knowledge and experience and run with it without getting mired in layers of approval and legal review. Do any of you guys feel like that? It just seems to get stuck during the process. Yesterday, Luke mentioned the sniff and piss rule, where basically as it goes through, and can you say that? We were trying to figure that out, where you go through, kind of like the legal review and everything, and everyone feels they have to put their mark on it and then move it on. And so that's sort of what happens in this corporate environment.
As opposed to the piss and sniff.
Yeah, right. That would be marking, just territorial. Yeah. So insufficient knowledge and ability, this seems to also be kind of a common theme. And of course, there's hundreds of them, and you guys will all have your own situations that relate to you. But there's a lot of people that feel like right now, with everything that's going on and the transitions that are happening on the web, they don't have enough knowledge to know what they're supposed to be learning. And it's really this daunting feeling when you feel like you don't know what you don't know. And so we're trying to kind of move into that a little bit more with the tools and processes, especially at this conference. There's a lot of sessions and overview of things that people can use to help them get unstuck. So I'm not a fan of hype. What is Web 2.0 really? What does it mean? How should we get started with it? A lot of people are worried that this is a hype-driven experience right now, another bubble that's forming, and that it's going to drop off. How much attention should we really pay to this trend that's happening in the industry, and how do we move forward? So poor collaboration and synergy, I think that this is a big piece, and this is a part of why Christian's team, how many people do you have on your team?
I mean, we're actually a total of 30, but where I work in Malmo, we're just 5 at the moment, but we usually work in teams that are between 8 and 12 people, so not a lot.
Yeah, not a lot, and I think that even in a working group, you might have 3 or 4 people work on a project at a time.
And I mean, we've done projects with 2 people.
Yeah. So I think that what's happening in larger organizations, and especially with teams that they don't have the right skills or the knowledge, is that they don't have the synergy that's happening. And that's why this session really focuses on the merging of design and development, because there's a lot of communication that isn't happening within organizations, not to mention management from the top down. There's a really big kind of consideration that happens with change management as a theory. And in the past, change management has come from the CEO going on down, or the top level thinking of a new vision or a new purpose, and kind of hierarchically descending it within their organization. And this is the first time, or one of the first times, that innovation and vision is coming from the bottom up. And so that's why this is such an interesting conversation, because we're starting to dialogue more, we're starting to blog more, we're starting to interact more with small teams at the lower levels of the organization, the broad levels of the organization. And in this world, the corporate management is having a hard time keeping up. As a matter of fact, they don't even know what's going on half the time. So we have the power for the first time, but people don't know it at the top level, so it's hard to make this change happen and this innovation culture happen within an organization pretty quickly. So this person was saying, I'm stuck because our developers and coders are stuck. Since I don't speak JavaScript, I'm having trouble convincing them to change and team, and learn. And so I think that it's really a communication conundrum right now that's happening within organizations, within teams, and even within individuals within a firm. Inadequate platform and tools. We're going to talk a lot about platform today, and I really feel that one of the key things that has come up in my talking to individuals that are unstuck and teams that are unstuck and companies that are unstuck is that they have a platform, both a philosophical platform, a platform of attitude, and also a technical platform that they're building on. Christian's firm actually builds on mostly .NET, right? And so it was really an interesting conversation to hear how he takes projects from start to finish in rapid fire time, kind of unbelievable tasks done in a time frame that most people would cringe and say no to, right? You guys do it though. So he'll take you through some case studies.
Not all the time. We've done some.
I think Christian's very special in that way, but because he's developing on the .NET platform, a lot of people, are any of you guys on ROR, Ruby on Rails? Any Plone people out there? And then who's on .NET? Yeah, Okay, well that's what I would figure. So what's happening now with the platforms that we're actually building on is that teams, designers and developers actually need to kind of work together to understand how this platform is helping them create and iterate at a faster level than ever before. And so this person is like, how do you plan for and build for Web 2.0 concepts when you're tied to robust legacy systems that have so far driven high growth and profitability? So at my organization, we don't often get blue sky projects. We often have to deal with legacy issues. How many of you guys, go ahead.
I think Jeffrey Selman would have the perfect answer for all of these. He would just say quit.
He says, Jeffrey Zeldman just says, don't stay there. You know, you can quit. But how many of you guys have to deal with legacy systems right now? Okay, so this is a big thing. I mean, it's hard to be agile in a legacy environment. Right now, I'm working on maybe 3 projects that have millions of dollars invested into legacy systems that are spread across 30 different modules. And people are moving to either a .NET or some other platform, and they're trying to iterate and change everything into this new 2.0 because they heard it was really cool. And so we are dealing with that on a daily basis. And a little bit later in the session, I want to talk to you about merging agile methodologies with UCD methodologies to kind of get you to the next level. And so core attitude, this is a big thing. And I think that one of the first things that Christian and I actually talked about, he actually brought this gorgeous article with him when he came to Barcelona. It was all about being fearless.
Yeah, it was written by David Lynch. You all know David Lynch.
Yeah, or it's on fearlessness.
Yeah, fearlessness.
And we were really lucky to talk to Malcolm McLaren a couple months ago. Malcolm McLaren was the
manager of Sex Pistols.
Sex Pistols, you know, and he talks about being a brilliant failure.
Yeah.
And so stuff like that. And so it's really about being fearless in this environment and not being afraid to make change happen. A lot of people are held back because they're afraid to make change. They don't think that they can disseminate that information through the organization. They don't know if it's worth their time to even try. And so this person is, I'm always trying to keep up with the latest and greatest, but as soon as I get something new out the door, I find myself behind again. I'm sick of it, and I know that things need to change. But is this person ready to actually make change happen? Because change management, which used to happen from the top down, is now happening from the bottom up. A lot of people don't feel that they have enough of a voice within the organization to actually make change happen in the proper way to get to the next level. So lack of progress and results. This is also a big one that you brought up, is feeling like you're moving forward and actually making sure that you get some results so that you have satisfaction in your work, right? And so, well, you're constantly...
If I understand you correctly, yes. If not, what do you mean?
Okay, well, basically, you need to feel like you're accomplishing something, right? And so I don't know if a lot of you are...
and not treading water.
Yeah, and you're not treading water. So within my organization, you know, we could work on a legacy project for a year and a half, and not feel like we're making movement forward. And I think that's one of the biggest pieces also about feeling unstuck, is getting somewhere, right? So you're just not on a treadmill or treading water in this case, but you're actually making progress forward. And that's why also I bring up Agile Manifesto and Agile methodologies as a great way to sort of get past that feeling that you're not getting anywhere at all. So this person says management only cares about getting tasks done. There's no interest in taking things to the next level related to design and implementation. How can I make them understand that this will actually help them drive better results?
Is Luke here? Is Luke W here? No, he'd say add value. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, make sure that you're adding value within your organization. So anyway, these are some of the symptoms. So where are you stuck? You know, this is definitely not all of it. I tried to capture just a few of the main ones that seemed thematic through everyone I spoke to. For sure, your situation is individual, independent, and different from everybody else's. And how many of you guys actually feel like you're stuck a little bit in your organization or in your daily lives? Anybody feel like you're stuck a little bit? Personal lives stuck, maybe, you know? And then how many of you feel like you're truly unstuck? Okay, I thought not everyone would raise their hand. So the truth is that it's going to be a shift and change over time. You're going to feel stuck and unstuck in different ways. Keith Yamashita actually wrote this book called Unstuck, which we realized after we came up with the main theme. But it really deals with corporate culture, and we're sort of taking that to the next level here with talking about Web 1.0 and 2.0. So where are you stuck? So it's time to get unstuck. So it's kind of like, you know, change your context. This is a great place to change your context. When I need to feel unstuck, a lot of times I go to Japantown, eat noodles, go grab some sushi. I'm Japanese, but the only thing I can say in Japanese is Nihongo wa kaimasen, which means I don't understand Japanese. Fourth generation person here. But somehow when I go to Japantown, it's like being in a completely different environment. and I can go and look at the bookstore and be inspired in a completely different way. So changing your context is great. Changing your perspective is fantastic, whether you need to go to the mountains or you need to go to church or you need to go out and look at the water. Just changing your perspective and getting out of your common environment and thinking about things differently really allows you to change your mind about things. And so this is really a session about figuring out ways that you can get unstuck. And again, we've found over and over again that this relates not only to your professional life, but it's to your personal life, because we're blending often the personal and the professional lives these days, and work is becoming play, right? They say the masters in the art of living have a little difference between their work and the play. They only do what they do best and leave others to wonder. So it's kind of a cool way to think about it. So getting unstuck, we thought about this continuum. And so first you start off unaware. People don't even know that they need to change. They're perfectly happy the way that they are. Then they kind of get into this awakening, and they realize, oh crap, you know, there's this 2.0 stuff that's going on. Ajax is big right now. What do we have to do to keep up with it? And they start to realize that there's this stuff they need to know. And then they go into the completely overwhelmed state. And so our team and other teams that we talk to and a lot of corporate clients are in the overwhelmed state, where they know that there's so much potential, but they don't really know where to start. It's a positive and a negative thing because there's so much going on right now. But most people that I've talked to that are unstuck, truly unstuck, have had an aha moment. To the person that raised your hand that said you were unstuck, who was that? Who was unstuck? So did you have an aha moment? Well, okay, what was an aha moment that you had where you just, hey, Bruce.
Just realizing our general position, where we were, what we were doing, what our goals were. It's just finally getting a culmination of many, many, many things, and finally aligning them.
Okay, that's perfect. Aligning vision. That's a huge thing. Unstuck. What was your aha moment? You didn't really have... Think about it.
It's one of those naturals.
Yeah, it's okay, because it's really interesting, because people that I talk to that feel unstuck, like Chris Messina actually started working with Drupal, and he had this aha moment where he realized that he could create what he was thinking about in rapid fire time, and it was really exciting. So a lot of people have this aha moment. I think we realized during the 1.5, I call it, transition between moving from 1.0 to 2.0, we were really getting into CSS and understanding tableless environment a couple years ago. And one of my designers did not want to go out of tables. She was so upset that I was making her do this. And finally, she ran in early to work one day. She had a picture that she took, and it was someone's phone that had our website on it, and everything was displaying perfectly clearly on the phone with no tables. And that was her aha moment about how we needed to understand that content was not just going to be displayed on the web, but it was going to be displayed on many different areas and devices. And so that was her understanding of what needed to happen to move to the 1.5 environment. So anyway, you get to this overwhelmed state. And then we say that there's an activation state where you realize that you have the tools and the processes and the communication and the strategy to actually start to make change happen. And we finally get to this success, which sometimes equates this 2.0 environment. 2.0 is a metaphor. It stood for a lot of things. It originally was just an Ajax kind of like browser mimicking desktop. What do you think of when you think of 2.0?
It's just a way of saying that we're trying to move on. To me, it's not tied to any special like techniques or platforms. It's just a way of defining that we're gone to the next level.
Right, okay. So 2.0 means we're going to the next level. So in our organization, we constantly have people that are coming up to us saying, okay, can you guys help us be state of the art? Can you make sure that we have the wow factor that we want for our clients and everything? And we are constantly dealing with people that want to be 2.0.
I have to ask you there, clients say that to you?
Yep.
But are they really willing to do it?
They don't know what they are even talking about. All they know is that there's this new thing out there, and they want to jump on that bandwagon. And
But they don't want to change.
They don't want to change, generally.
They just want it.
And then we get into legacy systems, and then we get into functional requirements, and then everything drops off from there. But we'll get into that. So anyway, Kristen and I met. We came up with a lot of these pieces of paper that you saw being held up. I don't know if you noticed in the movie, but I was packing in the background, leaving on a trip to Germany the next day, and he was taking pictures. And so we were just trying to figure out how we thought about this in this organizational team, tactics, and philosophy kind of way. And eventually, I came up, this is my own take on it. Kristen has a different take on what it means to get unstuck, because I'm used to dealing with corporate environments. So I feel that taking the STUCK principles that we started off with, that these are fundamental things that we need within our organization in order to make this change happen. Now, I just want to agree with Kristen that this is not a set of rules. This is not a process. This is a philosophy and the beginning of a conversation, because each one of you will have different things that you need. But as I have spoken to many, many people over the past year or several years even, I'm realizing that these are the things that people need. They need vision and purpose. A lot of people say that they need to have meaning in their life, and the people that are going to go the extra mile to integrate a lot of these new technologies and make the rally cry within their organization to make change happen, they need to feel there's a purpose behind it, and they need to have meaning in their life and a vision to boot. So I think that's a really big thing. Also, of course, we just talked about this, is you need to have the support within your organization, because if you're running solo and you don't have that support, you're not going to be able to move forward. So these are like 7 pillars if you want to think about them that way. You need to have the knowledge and ability to get the job done. And so today's session and also this conference, we're going to be able to take you through some of the tactics and the tools. We're not going to be able to change your corporate culture. We're not going to be able to help you change your actual attitude and philosophy. There's a lot of self-help books out there for that. But it's very important to understand the things that we have control over, and one of them is to learn and to grow with tools and abilities. Collaboration and synergy is a big thing. There's a lot of energy in working with groups of people. And I think making sure you have the right groups of people with the right skill sets is extremely important. I would have added communication to that. I think we have a lot of words that we wanted to put in there. But these are some of like the core principles: collaboration and synergy. Platform and tools I throw in there just for the 1.0 to 2.0 movement, because again, I feel if you have the right tools in place and you understand how to use them properly, that you're able to migrate quickly to the next level, as opposed to feeling stuck because you have an idea and you can't actually execute it. So getting into attitude and fearlessness. And this is really where, Christian, the philosophy behind your group stands out, because it's totally just go for it. Sometimes I walk into a team, meeting or something, and we have a bunch of daunting tasks, and one team will say, oh, that's too much, we can't get it done in that time frame. I don't even think we should start. Well, that's going to take us 4 to 6 months to do, and I don't really think that's realistic. And then you have another team, and they're like, okay, where do we start? Let's go for it. This is totally great. And so you want to start working with your team, trying to knock out the negativity if you can. Yeah, maybe you need to let go of a few people. Maybe you need to change your mind, your perspective. Whatever it is the attitude is going to make the biggest difference in getting into this unstuck mode, I think. And being fearless is really a part of it, making sure that you're not afraid to make change happen.
It's not about, jumping off cliffs. It's just about being conscious of those little things that tend to hold you back, and just say, what the heck, let's cross that street. Or whatever. It's just small, everyday things all the time.
Absolutely. So even in every single day, if you're approaching it in a positive way. And that's why, again, getting into agile methodology is so valuable, because it allows you to think quickly and iteratively. And the last part of that, as we mentioned before, is making progress and getting results. So getting results is really the big thing here, making sure that you're moving forward. So thinking about it in terms of graphics, because I'm a designer and I really have to think about that way, you have, this is that diagram that we started off with that we were sketching out in Barcelona. So you have your company culture, or your environment. Basically, it can be a small organization or a large organization, but there's a lot of unstuck things that need to happen within this group, right? Then we have the organization itself. So you have your culture, which is more the attitude. Then you have the organization itself, which can be the company or the team that you guys are in. I put team here because a lot of times there's actually teaming that has to happen along with tools and processes and communication structures. But really the main point is that at the center of it all is you. So however you intersect with this, and context surrounds every single situation. So you may have a day where you feel unstuck because you get through your email and you actually execute your to-do list and you get everything done. You may have another day where you just feel like you can't get anything done. And so it's all going to depend on context, what kind of team you're in, what kind of environment you're in. But if you start thinking about all these different elements and how they relate to these areas in your work life, in your personal life, you can begin to see first where you are stuck, so that you can start getting unstuck. And I think that was the biggest piece also in talking to people, is that they just felt this way, but they weren't really sure why. So breaking it down in a way that you can actually digest it and start to make change happen. So then we start thinking about, okay, here's the 7 things that we just talked about, and here's how they fit in to whether it's a cultural thing, it's an organizational thing, it's a team thing, or it's an independent self thing. And at the middle you can see there, having fearlessness in there, having fun, making sure that your team is adaptable. Adaptability there, knowledge and skill set and adaptability is really important. Making sure that all along the way you have progress and results, that you have collaboration and synergy, support and buy-in, vision and purpose. These things are all important. And then I encourage you to take your own attributes that you feel are important to being an unstuck team or unstuck individual and add it to a diagram like this. And so you really understand what's working and not working, what is not working. So what I try and do is take these things then. This is one of the exercises that I've been doing. And mapping it out in a grid like this. And you can add whatever points you want to your grid, but you can start off with these and actually say, okay, 0 is the middle, 10 is the outside. Where do you guys stand? So how many of you feel like you're making progress and results on a regular basis? You know, 5 maybe, right? How many feel that you have the right attitude? Right? So we could go through this wheel and basically you answer these questions and different charts start to come up and you can see where you're stuck. And ideally, as we go through this, you could have a pretty balanced wheel, but you're still sort of like this. Or you can get to this outer level where you feel like it's more round, and obviously the wheel needs to turn. And so the goal is to have an even wheel with all of the attributes that you need in order to feel unstuck so that you guys can move forward. And that's one of the exercises that I think is a truly helpful thing to do within your organization, is once you decide what the attributes are for you needing to be unstuck or your team needing to be unstuck, you can bring a chart like this back to your organization and actually have them chart out where they feel that they're at. And it's really interesting to see where people put themselves, and you can even match this against how they might be feeling later. And again, context surrounds every single one of these charts. So there may be a specific project where you felt like the collaboration and synergy was there, or that you had the tools that you needed to do what you needed to do, and other projects where you really didn't. So this is more of a complete wheel, a wheel that turns. And so this is just a good way for you to see where you are stuck within your organization and what needs to change. And it's also really good for upper management to understand that technology and tools and platform become part of this continuum towards achieving this next level of success. It's not all marketing value, it's not all strategy and vision, it's not all customer experience this time. It's actually integrated on down within the organization. So, you know, the idea here is to think, do, and then be done. It's really simple. Let's just keep it simple, right? So just to go over quickly this feeling of being unstuck, and really how this all came about is because I kept talking to different clients and realizing that people needed to merge design and development, and that we needed a little bit more of a hybrid design mentality. And so one of the things I saw is that people were trying to use agile methods, you know, and so this is sort of, you know, how it used to be, right? Well, we're trying to map user experience with agile development so that we can be unstuck. And this is a way to think about it. It's definitely not the only way. It's definitely not your way. But for a lot of people out there that I deal with on a daily basis, they understand the notions of agile, you know, development, but they're not applying UCD, user-centered design principles, on top of that. And I think merging design and development principles is really, really important in terms of getting unstuck. So this is how life used to be, right? Where design and development was separated, sometimes into different rooms, sometimes into different buildings, now different countries. And also the terms design and development were very, very solid. Now we have a designer that could even be a developer, or a developer that could be a designer. And the terms are being a little bit interchanged. Chris Messina brought up a really good point the other day. We were at the panel discussion, and he said designers are solving problems. And that problem could be a visual problem. And that could indeed be pixel pushing or print or whatever it needs to be. But that designer could also be solving a technical problem. That designer could be solving an interface issue or a user experience problem. And so we're solving problems these days. We're not just designing solutions that are brand oriented or color palette oriented. We're actually getting into a next level.
That's interesting, because I'd say solving problem is the older way of looking at design, and designing solution is a better way, because
Absolutely.
to us, design is process, and designing a solution is the goal.
Yeah.
So coming from whatever perspective, designer, developer, or maybe you should say graphic designer, user interface designer, developer, we're designing a solution together, where design might be the common factor that actually makes us reach the goal.
Right, so design could be a
definition.
verb. Your design, designing is a solution for both design and development. And so right now with design and development, you know, the kind of the hybrid that's going on these days, or the goal to have this hybrid go on, is that there's a new gray area. And this gray area is where agile development fits in, where 2.0 fits in, where a lot of these tools and processes and this fast-paced iterative design cycles fit in. Rich client, media, you know, everything fits into this, even social networking and everything fits into this hybrid between the two. And that's why some of the people that are the most unstuck individuals that I know are a hybrid of design and development. And actually, I wrote an email out describing Kristen's background, and I said, Kristen approaches design from a development perspective. And he sent me an email back and he said, I'm crying here. Because I was basically telling him that he wasn't a designer in his mind, where I was trying to explain how your mind is different than a lot of organizations out there, because he's actually combining the two.
It's just that I don't see that gap at all.
I know. See, it's amazing. He's not even aware. So it's pretty amazing. So another way to think about it is, if you think about something like this, you can think about designers being on one, you know, kind of migrating over to this middle ground, to the 2.0 environment. And that's also really what the goal is to merge design and development philosophies, techniques, tools, processes, and communication styles, so we can really take things to the next level, right? And that's merging left and right brains, and that's not easy. So we're trying to get there, right? You know, a lot of people have gotten there, but a lot of us are still working. This is a retarded animation. I don't know how to change it, sorry. But legacy, you know, these are project types. So you either have a legacy app that's been in use for years, you have a complete redesign of a new app, you have a modular application, a redesign of a smaller one, or a new, fresh and new 2.0 app. And a lot of people that are unstuck, yeah, they are doing fresh and new small apps like the 2.0 environment. And yeah, they don't have legacy issues to deal with. But I encourage people that have large teams to actually start with smaller projects. Someone on my team that's starting to have that aha moment, you know, people get that aha moment in their own time, wants to build a widget at my office. And I said, you know what, go for it. Pick something you really think is valuable, that you really want to do. Get a team together. I will give you the time to do it, and make it happen. Because in these small iterative cycles, if you take a project that's meaningful to you and you're able to execute it, that's one of the best ways to get your team unstuck, is give them something that they can move forward with, that they can test new technologies and see processes in action and actually take it to the next level really quickly. They'll feel like they've gotten something done. They might have their aha moment. You need that aha moment within your organization in order to move things forward. So just, you know, quickly, I just have a few more slides, and I want to let Kristen get to his part of the talk. But you have your agile methodology, which agile methods basically came from extreme programming, and agile means, okay, we're just going to do and be flexible and adaptable. But it's not cowboy coding. I think a lot of people think that agile is cowboy coding, where you get renegade programmers together and they just go for it. And that's really not what it's about. If you've heard of Scrum, Scrum is actually not an acronym, but it's a term to kick a ball back into place. Scrum takes agile methods and organizes them into a little more of a comprehensive process. But even Scrum doesn't yet have the user experience principles embedded into it to make it take it rather to the next level by introducing user-centered design. So that's why, you know, Agile's using Scrum or Agile, you think, okay, what can I do in 3 weeks' time? Let's lay it out. Let's create a features list and a backlog if you're using Scrum. Let's actually build and prototype. Now, you build and prototype quicker if you have a framework or a platform to do so, and that's why .NET is so powerful. Then you need to test and iterate. Now, all along the way, we're getting feedback from the UCD side. People yesterday were asking us, well, how do you take something that you have all these months up front to do your contextual research and your observation and all of your usability testing, and that's really great, but we've got 3 weeks to build this thing. How do you make that work when the designers or the user experience specialists have so much lead time? It's all about integrating the two. So you need to integrate the feedback You need to integrate the observations. You need to integrate the usability testing. We had one client from Japan. He actually came to us and said, you know, we'd like to do testing in America for a product that's going to be released all over the world. And I said, wow, that's really cool. Why are you testing in America? And he goes, well, you guys are the lowest common denominator. If you can use it, then anyone can use it. And I was like, oh, thanks, you know, but it's true. In America, we bring things back, you know, after we've used them for 2 years. We never read instructions. If something doesn't work right out of the box, we just figure it's broken. We don't take that time. In Japan...
How'd you deal with IKEA?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, totally different.
I always read the manuals.
Yeah, I know. See, we're not, we don't read. I mean, even IKEA furniture, right? Bring it home, and if you can't figure it out, you're not going to put it together. God, and directions and instructions is really bad. So anyway, so this Japanese client came, and we had 2 months to build and develop the whole UI for a new product. This was a hard product. This was an actual product. It wasn't web-based. And we managed to do 7 rounds of usability testing in 8 weeks. And that meant also 7 rounds of prototyping. Yeah. And that also meant, you know, recruiting and getting people in. And it was really fast-paced, but we did it. And in the end, our Japanese client said, wow, you've really changed the way we think about doing this from now on. And we're gonna change the way we do things.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
It's just, I was thinking, if you were to ask me, what can we do in 3 weeks?
Yeah.
I would have to ask, I know what I used to be able to do in 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I mean...
Well, it depends on how much you sleep,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, but the whole point is kind of, for me, being unstuck is you don't know how much you can do in 3 weeks from where you are right now, if you're in the presence.
Right.
And to define it on forehand would be kind of, I don't know.
Well, that's the reason why Agile works, actually.
I don't have an answer. I just...
Right. Okay. So I have an answer to that. And basically, the way that it works is that you take a project that could take 2 years, and you start to break it down, just like you break it down, right? And so you break it down into something that you think is doable within 3 weeks. You have a dialogue with your team and a discussion, and you actually outline in Scrum, you create a backlog list of things that you want to do in the next 18, 22 months, you know, whatever. And then you break it down into things that you mutually agree that you can do in that 3-week cycle. Now, you choose the length of this sprint, if I were to use Scrum terms. Sometimes I do a month. Sometimes for web development, if I'm on the marketing side, I'll actually take a 3-month chunk and make sure that there's iterations every quarter of the year. So it really depends on what chunk you want to take. But 3 weeks is a good cycle because you can do quite a bit in that time frame. It gives you just enough time to outline your goals, to do the work, and then to see what you've done and to see if you've actually made progress. So my answer to that would be that you try and break it down into something that you can do, and also set the requirements up in the features list so that you can actually do it in a prioritized manner. And that prioritized manner should be user-centered. It should be user-focused. And so I think that's the biggest piece that we try and bring to it. So anyway, you kind of see how there's agile development and there's UCD, but the goal is really to try and merge the two. And again, I'm not trying to put forward a methodology or a process that you have to stick to. These are philosophies and tips and tools that you can use within your own organization. And I'm trying to let you know by case studies and by giving you examples that they really do work. So, you know, just to wrap up this unstuck kind of goal or the approach is basically understanding your purpose and vision that we talked about, making sure your team is in place, making sure your attitude is in place, and making sure that you're getting results. That's really the unstuck methodology or the process that you want to go through. At the same time, with the Agile mixed with UCD, you want to make sure that you understand your audience's needs, right? And someone came up yesterday and asked a question about a portal and how they design for their portal. And it's really about getting back to your core audience and asking them questions and making sure that you are prioritizing the features that you're building into your application or your product for their needs, not the needs of your management, not the needs of your advertisers, because it's not going to be successful unless it's simple. Prototype and testing, whether you have the right platform in place or not, you want to be moving there so you can prototype and iterate really quickly, and that your designers have the tools and your developers have the tools, and that they're working together in these short iterative cycles so that you can constantly make improvement all along the way, and then you get results. And so that's also results, and results is the biggest thing of all. And the platform, just to go into it, you know, determine whether you're Ruby's on Rails or whether you're going to move into Clone, more robust, or whether you're .NET here, obviously .NET, is really an important way to help everything move forward in this continuum Prioritizing features is a big thing. Whenever I get clients together, we have these huge brainstorming sessions where we'll write all the features. And we don't just do feature lists anymore, and we don't just do tasks anymore. What we do is we do a task map. And I actually don't have a picture of it, but you start off with your core features and put off of that everything that you can do, and you start to map it out visually, and you can see what the mental model would be if someone coming to your site or coming and using your application would be. Sometimes it's overwhelming, so you want to try and keep that mental model as simple as possible and prioritize the features according to audience need, technical feasibility, and business needs. And then you weigh them and come up with an agreed upon structure from your upper management on down so that you have a prioritized list. And in a workshop I teach, we actually go through this process, and we have the must-haves and the nice-to-haves, and then we prioritize those features, and that begins to form the list that you're going to try and accomplish in this short iterative time frame. Starting with a single feature is often a good way to start, where you start with one core functionality or piece of functionality, or if you have a legacy system, you start by modifying the key functionality on that site for that particular type of audience. And then we get into team feedback and results. So if you're doing this properly and you migrate into this new way of thinking, you're getting your entire team involved from the beginning, and then they feel that they've made impact and they've gotten results together. And that's really one of the best ways to feel like you're unstuck or to get there. So just to pay homage to Keith Yamashita's book, Unstuck, we definitely take a lot of principles from this. It's a great book. It deals a lot with corporate structure and attitude, and it can really help you and your team get unstuck from an attitude perspective. And then
I have to read that.
Yeah, you need to read that. Well, you might not need to read it. And we also launched UNSTUCK.com. And so one of the things that we've been doing is gathering feedback from our audience and asking them, how do you feel stuck? And what do you need in order to feel unstuck? And this was a really fast turn project that if we have time at the end, I'll pull up actually online. It's actually a little buggy still because we did it in about 4 days. But Chris Messina from Citizen Agency and Larry Half from Magnolia and myself, last week we met and we went, hey, you know what would be really cool is if you could Twitter in your stuck and unstuck. And also, if you could just fill it out and use OpenID to get, your submissions in there. And so right now we built, if you go to StuckOnStuck.com, and if you guys have Wi-Fi and you want to go there right now and submit some ways that you're feeling stuck or unstuck, in 140 characters or less, you can describe your scenario. And then it's just the beginning of a conversation and something that I hope will begin to explode into a lot of discussion so that people can comment and help each other figure out ways that we can actually get unstuck. So anyway, that's the end of this little part of the presentation. I'm going to let Kristen go, and then we're going to leave some room at the end for some questions. Our company
Hopefully.
motto is exceed expectations and take vacations. So we really like that in our group.
So I need to know, does any of you guys have any questions that you know of? So I'll try and talk faster than I usually do.
Okay.
No?
This is a beautiful prezo here. Let's see.
Okay, so my approach is more personal than Kelly's. I'm just going to try and describe some of the work we've done and what Unstuck means to me. I had no idea about it before I met Kelly.
Well, he didn't know he was unstuck. So it's kind of hard.
This is basically just a short story about unstuckiness, as told by me. I'm creative director at Future Lab in Sweden. So I've been asking myself, so why unstuck? And I think the answer is that it's all about the context these days, how fast they're changing, and that we need to be able to adapt, like as a company, as a team, as a person. It's kind of like to keep up with fashion, you need money. You need to care, you need to read magazines. You kind of need to adapt like twice a year. And I think that fashion actually has a lot to do with trends. But we need to be able to just keep up to be able to survive. You see all these startups, they're popping up from the ground. And some people just might call that being able to survive in a corporate context. So stuckiness, I have to say, Kelly was talking about it coming from like a web perspective, but it has nothing to do with context or media. I'd say it's a state of mind and or being that affects the outcome and result of a process involving a person, a team, or an organization. And I mean, it could be when you're skateboarding, when you're surfing, whatever you're doing, it's like you can feel stuck or you can feel unstuck. Unstuck is kind of like having a flow. Stuck is like trying and just not getting it right. I have to talk about this. This is coming from a communication perspective. The way we see it at FutureLab is that right now there is only one world, because since I started working with web, they've always been talking about the virtual world as opposed to the real world. And nowadays it's kind of like, what's more real than the other if I spend 18 hours like out of 24 having conversations online? So what we're seeing, you see the other stuff, that's TV, radio, print, it'll just go away. Because there are only two places that enables dialogue, interaction, and experiences. It's the old place that'll always be here, which is here, and then it's the new place, and that's the ones and zeros. And I see all companies moving their heart of communication into the web and the internet. So this is kind of an unstuck thought that I had. I would like to call it the NOGWI concept, or unstuckiness applied. It would probably be the NUGWUI concept or something. But I would like to see the future of the web being no graphical web user interface at all. It would just be strip away all the browser interfaces, the mobile interfaces, and design solutions that are only technical interfaces. And stop talking about devices and focus on core concept and business, because that's what you have to do when you don't have a graphical user interface to rely upon. And also, then you can start talking about, instead of devices, different user experiences. And that's really interesting, talking about .NET 3 and WPF, because you can talk about ultimate experiences, you can talk about browser experiences or web experiences. So I think we're going to give it a go to try and design solutions that actually from the beginning and get-go doesn't have graphical user interfaces, because that really means that we need to be able to understand the core concept and the core business, and it'll be obvious if we can do it or not. So that's kind of unstuck, you know, separate things, separate interface from the core technical platform. I have a little case. I have three cases actually. This one is called Leap, or we did a contemporary content management system based on the .NET platform 3 years ago for a client called Ikonbanken, which is the online bank of IKEA. They actually do all IKEA stuff. This is interesting because we were contacted and they just wanted us to help assist them in, they were in a, I don't know what's it called. They were contacting vendors. They were going to buy a content.
RFP process.
Yeah, RFP process.
He doesn't do that.
And we kind of just helped them with the demands, but this was a process of 3 months, and like they came over to our office. They weren't our clients or anything, and we just talked to them for a while, and we ended up kind of knowing them better than they do themselves. But anyway, we were never, I mean, we didn't have a content management system, we didn't have anything like that. So what we did was just call them up and say, hey, how's it going? Because they contacted 5 existing vendors and they wanted to do test installations. And they did, and they were going to run their online banking services in these systems as well. And none of them, they weren't good enough. And we're talking top vendors in Sweden as well as in the world. So all of a sudden they're like, we don't know what to do. But we said, well, this is how the concept should look like. Take this concept, present it to the vendors, say this is what you want to do. And they did, and the vendors, they were like, we can't do that. So what happens was they called us up and they're like, can you do this in a month? Have the first installation run our online banking services within a month? And I said, I'm going to have to call you back. And I did, 2 hours later, and we actually pulled it off. Then we had 2 weeks of kind of, you know, getting it together with them. And it's been 3 years, and not a single meltdown, same app. They're doing whatever they're doing, their online banking services. They're working with their sites, their campaigns, everything. And that was kind of our aha moment, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Did you sleep during that time period?
Not much. And 2 people.
Yeah, that's amazing.
We actually ran into problems as well. What happened was that we did this amazing system that's still working, but you know, it was kind of, what do you say, forward thinking,
Yeah, forward
ahead.
thinking. Ahead of its time.
And the people, they were used to working with legacy systems. So all of a sudden we gave us this little flexible app. They could do what they want. The developers could develop like kind of modules, but really applications within the application, and none of it would affect each other. Like their content contributors, their designers, their developers could work totally separate. And they used to have this, I don't know, change request process that was really long, and it wasn't needed anymore. But they couldn't really apply it to this new application. So it kind of took us a year to get them to really know the application, to work with the system. So we said, that's totally wrong. If we put this app in the wrong context, they won't be able to use it. Well, now they do. So we came up with this term is what people actually need for being able to take this new app to their heart. They need action space. They need room for mistakes. So we kind of created this, it's basically a philosophy that consists of two parts. It's the action space grid and it's the action space attitude. And the action space grid is, it's actually a .NET platform that we did a proof of concept for, but we didn't realize it fully, which kind of takes from the fact that we have just a grid. The grid's empty. The only thing the grid does, it's enabling applications to talk to each other, to know about each other once we put them in the grid. So regardless of where we start from, we can start with like 2 little apps, or we can start with 1 app. And then as the context evolves, as the client want to put more money in, as they want to redefine something, we can just put in more and more applications, and they would together kind of create the whole solution.
So it's almost object-oriented.
Yeah.
Because that's one of the things that we've been noticing in a lot of groups, and designers especially, and user experience people especially, that if they think about tasks and actions and attributes as objects, that it makes it much easier to put things together really quickly once they have the pieces that they can pull together almost three-dimensionally.
Yeah. And actually, it could be like a third-party system as well. So it's not just our own small .NET applications. It could be whatever that we could integrate into that grid. So it would kind of just make us, I mean, one of these apps, I'm not talking big apps, like one of these could have a role that's just, I'm going to send out emails whenever another application tells me to do it. So it's just us being able to handle change over time, or our clients actually, and being able to securely explore and elaborate with one of these without having it affect like the whole context. The other thing was the action space attitude, which is basically more important because this was a new way of doing it. We kind of said, screw systems. Systems are closed context. We need to be able to handle open contexts that change all the time. So actually, we did the proof of concept, and then we continued working with the attitude.
So it's almost like applying an open source mentality.
Yeah.
Chris Messina is the open source guy.
Yeah, well,
So
it's not open source, it's open.
Right, but the mentality behind that is being applied to your environment. Yeah.
And we worked with this for a year, I'd say, with the attitude. And then we actually became Future Lab. And I'm going to tell you about a really cool project. It's a 2-week project. We're finishing it today. It's a project with Microsoft, Sweden. They're all here. You should be proud. They're UNSTUCK. And it's actually a project where we're just starting a dialogue. It's more of showing an intention that Microsoft Sweden wants to start a dialogue with the design community in Sweden. And we're from the design community. We cannot use Photoshop Kung Fu to talk with designers in Sweden. So we need to do something that's really unexpected. And we came up with a concept. It's kind of an identity. There's a brand platform, there's a communication platform, there's a design platform specifically for loose ends. And the first thing we're implementing is a site which basically just tells Microsoft's intention. This is a 2-week project. What we did was the platforms for the communication, all the copy, all the naming. We did the web app using .NET Platform, Atlas, Ajax, ASP.NET. And we also did a backend framework that is super object-oriented within that period of time, which actually means we could do the thing that Chris Messina did in as short time,
right,
using the technology that does
right.
this. And it's funny. Most people we've tried this on, it's like, is this Microsoft? Are you serious? Yes, it is. And this is actually the way the site looks. And it's all web standards, XHTML, CSS, and the only graphics are actually the logo and small icons and gradient on top. Everything else is just HTML. And what we're going to do is kind of, within Microsoft, they've been having these discussions about what's important, but we don't have all the answers. We want to have a dialogue with our users. So we've kind of summed this into little spotlights where we start having a dialogue with users. And this is just another picture of it. It's an insane project. We had them take, they took all the decisions. And, I mean, we had, I'd say, no problems. We've had discussions.
So that's a huge piece of the unstuckness and the time frame is working collaboratively with your client.
Yeah.
And not having a week go by where they can't make a decision or decision by committee. So it's being really fluid with the decision-making process also.
And the common factors with all these 3 projects is the dialogue we've had before the project. And it's not been a dialogue about the project. It's been a dialogue where we've been getting to know each other. A dialogue about the context, understanding the contexts. And I don't know, we talked for, I think, 2 months before, just talking, just getting to know each other. And then once we understand their context and they understand where we're coming from, we have the relationships, it's easier to get Unstuck projects going.
Successful dating, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. So, context. I'd say basically that's everything. This is a new skate park in an area that's rapidly changing in Sweden. It used to be, they used to build boats. Now they build really, really expensive apartments. But coming from a skating background, I'm used to looking at the city totally different than, let's say, a pedestrian. They see a curb and they see a potential, like, trip trap. I see something to do fun things on. And I guess what I'm saying is try to look at things. We're talking about designers and developers. Try to look at things differently. Try to see context from other perspectives. This is, as a skater, this is how you want the city to look. This is what you're trying to find all the time. But you're not. But you're finding little bits and pieces of it. And so try skating for a day. I guess that's basically what I'm saying. Unstuckiness. For me, embrace dialogue all the time. That's the most important part. Embrace dialogue. Focus on the solution, not the project. The project is just a tool. I mean, once the project is done, the solution actually starts to live. And have someone focus on that all the time. Disconnect that person or that team from the project. They shouldn't have to worry about money, deadlines.
So who is that? What's the role? What's the name of that person? Do they have a name? Or is it just an individual on the team?
I mean, you could call it the integrator, I guess, in one way, because, like, integrate the solution to the business.
So it's someone that's keeping their eye on the big picture, maintaining contact with the client as well, and then working with your team.
Well, it could be the client as well as the vendor. Yeah, I'm proud to say we're Microsoft vendors now. Work with us, Microsoft USA.
Yeah.
Find common factors instead of focusing on differences. I've heard people talk about designers and developers, blah, 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 they were so different. No, you're not. You're human beings. instead of focusing on how different you are, because you'll find 1,000 things, like I would be different from another creative director, Yuan right there, we're totally different, we're both creative directors. I mean, but what are the common factors? The common factors within the project is that you're going to create a solution. Be good at what you do. I mean, that's just the basics. Keep it simple, always, always, always. Make room for mistakes. Allow them to happen, because that's kind of when you'll find something unexpected. And try and have fun. And I guess Malcolm McLaren's going to be... Oh, forgot. I have one more. This is kind of what we're working from right now, is that intention plus dialogue through context is kind of a way for us, if we understand the intention, if we have a tight dialogue with our clients, and if we run all this through the context, we usually get really good results, like we did with Microsoft here.
Right.
And this is Malcolm McLaren. He's going to be angry at me. I just got the URL, flamboyantfailure.com. He actually said it's better to be a flamboyant failure than a mediocre success.
Yeah, he was great.
I guess that's what we try and achieve.
Flamboyantfailure.com. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's all I had.
No, that's great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So we have a few minutes left, just 10 minutes or so, just to answer questions and to start a dialogue within this group. And if you would be so kind as to step up to the mic if you have a question or a comment even about feeling stuck or unstuck. At the same time, if we can launch the StuckUnstuck.com here, just to see, I'd love for any one of you to be able to go to this site and actually participate by entering your stuck and unstuck modes that you're feeling like you're in. I think that the site was loading a little funny this morning, so I'm going to see if it actually loads properly. But does anyone have any questions or comments or dialogue that they want to interject here? Yesterday,
critique.
Yeah, yesterday in the panel, it was very interesting because a lot of people came up with questions and legacy issues that did come up. So these are some things. Stuck, automating repetitive workflows is not a good idea. Not sure if we use first or third voice and how to get unstuck. Okay, so these people, someone moved their swim team's website from Go Live to WordPress. And so what you need to do here, which is really awesome, is that you actually sign in with an open ID. So we try to make this as open as possible while still maintaining some context within, organizing it, so we don't have people just randomly entering everything. You can also go to Twitter and add Stuck as a friend or add Unstuck as a friend, and you can automatically do this through the site. And once they accept you as a friend, which is now automated, you can actually Twitter into direct Stuck, D Stuck, and then enter your message, or D Unstuck, and it will actually post here. So if you have a moment, what we're trying to do is collect as much data, information, feedback, comments as possible during this time frame so that we can begin to organize them and see how people are feeling stuck or unstuck. And no one's feeling like they want to ask any questions or say anything. You guys are a little bit tired. It's like a long, super long session. Getting anything out of it? Yeah, go ahead.
Microphone.
Microphone if possible, but yeah. Yeah, we just have a few minutes here. And this is a dialogue. This is something we all want to get to. And actually what's so funny is that this is what this conference is about merging design and development. And I just really feel like it's a conversation that we have to have. Go ahead.
Okay, so you mentioned the role integrator before. I've heard people talk about another definition of integrator, being a person who integrates media assets and design assets from the designers and working with the developers on the other side. That's a new role that a lot of people are talking about. What's your view on that?
I'd say business integrator, like
Yeah.
graphic designer,
Yeah.
product designer.
Yeah, no, I'm just wondering what's your thoughts about that role that's a lot of people are talking about, but I haven't seen it.
No, I haven't really seen it either. There's a guy called Robbie Ingebretson, I guess, from Identity Mind, who does a lot of work with WPF. And they have the role, the integrator, because they have their graphic designers doing that stuff, and they have their developers doing that stuff. And the integrator actually connects it in Blend, Expression Blend. And I don't know, it's such a new role in that production context, so I can't really, you'd have to talk to Robbie about it, how it works in that way. I can talk a little bit about it, coming from like focusing on the solution when it comes to a project.
But you've seen that role, so the attributes would be someone that's kind of right, left brain, someone that understands both design and development processes.
Yes.
Someone that understands the business speak,
Yes.
so they can deal with the clients.
Yes.
I talked to a lot of gaming companies, and one of the gaming companies I talked to, they had a role that they put in there. They called him a project lead, but he was actually an integrator.
Yeah.
And they said that he was the magic piece that tied the whole company together and made everything
Yeah.
work, that most companies didn't have within the organization. So I think that there might be a new role out there, just like a content person is needed sometimes for, for a website
Yeah.
when they haven't realized that they need that role. So
I
whether we call it an integrator or
Yeah.
something
I had a
else.
similar role working with a client. They just wanted me, they had like this, they have a really traditional like waterfall process. And they had these different project teams working with sales, technology, design. And they just needed a person to check up on them every day.
Right. So even internally, if
So
you
I
have
just
that
had
person,
to go and talk to people and just say, hey, they're doing that, you're doing that. It's not aligned.
right,
What do
right.
we do?
So do you think that still works within a company or an organization that doesn't have an outside client, that it would still work internally?
Yeah,
Okay,
definitely.
that's great.
I think a lot of gaming development companies has a role called technical artist. That's somewhat similar to the
Yeah,
integrator.
but a lot of companies don't have that role embedded, and it's also not a term or something they hire for regularly. It's based on skill set also. So definitely, though, in all your projects that have been successful, you've had someone like that. And actually, I have to say, too, that we've always had a lead that understood the hybrid design mentality, that understood and could talk to and translate the client's needs into what we were doing. And that's actually very necessary. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay,
Anybody
thanks.
else? Anybody else? Anybody else? We've got 5 minutes.
Hi. So
Good morning.
my name is Greg LeBlanc. I'm working with a company that deals with legacy systems. That is basically our life. We work with industrial software. But we have web clients, we have things like that. And basically, I see the future of what things are supposed to look like. And I'm charged with trying to give that vision to the company, but the management and the developers are both resistant to this. And I had a traumatic week last week because someone nuked my wiki server, and I was just about to go live with it with like our roadmap and all these ways of expressing things. And I guess what I'm learning here is that I have people that understand all the technical details. I can describe what I want. I can say, here's a PowerPoint that I mocked up and things like that. And I'm looking at going, I can't do it in PowerPoint anymore. I have to do it like an expression, or I need something to get the thought of how it comes out of my head down on something. So how do you guys go about doing that? I mean, I guess I could be one of these integrator type people. I do the technical and the visual, but how do you get the skills, or do you have to get a team, or what do you need to do?
It's understanding what platform you feel the most comfortable in, what you can create. It's just like being able to draw for the first time you have an idea, and you need to have the right tools, whether it's a paint or it's pencils, or whatever it is that allows you to flow and get it out from your mind into whatever it is that you're going to be displaying to give your upper management that aha moment.
I think it shouldn't be about presentations. I think it should be about like an ongoing dialogue that you need to kind of try and set that up and have them really understand and talk about it instead of just listening to it. Because, I mean, what you're talking about is basically how do I present this the most effective way.
Well, how does he get his thought out quickly so that he can get it to the right people in the right time frame? In a way,
There's one thing, it's can you actually add the value so that they listen to it, and then have the dialogue.
I think dialogue is so important, and it's part of every essence of what it takes to make change happen. In some organizations, it's going to take longer. And one of the things we talked about yesterday was how Microsoft has actually done this fabulous job of taking, communication from smaller teams, agile teams, from people that are working, and Robert Scoble really led the way with blogging. And so what used to be very closed is now very open. I mean, people would say Apple's very closed in some ways now, even though they have a really, innovative environment and everything. Because what's happening in Microsoft, at least as an example, is that this is from talking to friends of mine or people that work there more than anything else, is that the dialogue is going on and it continues. And I think that that kind of movement from that lower level, I don't want to say levels, but let's just say senior management doesn't get it, you know. Extending that up, you need to be able to show something so that that senior management can have that aha moment. And that's usually something that is functional and that works, like a widget, or something that they'll actually use, and then they go, oh, I get it. And they have to have that, and sometimes you can't have that dialogue with senior management because they just don't take the time.
Yeah.
They don't have the time, they don't take the time. So whatever it is to communicate those, basically it's about communication.
Yes.
So sometimes dialogue is an effective communication,
But I think-
sometimes it's visual.
But talking about corporations, like yesterday there were a lot of questions about corporate, and like everyone talks about Microsoft in one way, Apple in one way, Yahoo in one way.
Yeah, as examples.
But I mean, what we realized then when we were working with Microsoft is we're not working with Microsoft, we're working with people that love
Right.
what they do.
Right.
And I think you need to, I think part of 2.0 is also that it's about people.
Right.
And if corporations want to be part of whatever 2.0 is, they have to actually, I mean, take that whole thing in, not be
Right.
senior management, be people that do some work.
Right, and that's why the projects that you've worked on have been so successful, and the fluid, the discussion that you've had up front creates synergy between client and vendor, and then that's really what you need. The projects that we've launched a whole company in 3 weeks with 8 people, and did their logo and did their website, did their marketing materials, and got them to a trade show on time and everything. But it was because the decision-making process, the communication, and the way that we went through our workflow, it was trusting, there was respect there, we listened, we heard them, we listened, we executed, they signed off, and we were able to get it done. And that is actually one of the more fluid ways of thinking about getting something done, is something gets stuck because people can't make decisions. So it's giving them the ability to make decisions quickly and effortlessly, and to get out of that committee discussion and making sure that it's not, just because you're going to launch it doesn't mean it's forever. You need to be able to say, you know what, we can iterate and change that if that doesn't work, because a lot of people are afraid that they're going to launch it and it's going to stick forever. So do we have time for one more question? And anybody? Okay. Well, go to stuckunstuck.com. We really welcome any feedback, comments. I think this is a huge discussion for this conference in particular. We were talking yesterday afterwards about how this particular conference is one of the only ones that is truly positioned as a hybrid between design and development in all ways, in shapes and forms, and with the tools and everything that people are learning. I mean, some of them are developer focused, some of them are more traditional design focused, but I really think that this needs to continue so that we can all figure out ways of getting ourselves and our companies unstuck.
I'd like to see more designers there, though.
Yeah, absolutely. So anyway, thank you guys very much.